In this movie, I'm going to explain a different technique of animation with ActionScript called a timer. A timer is something that can execute not necessarily with the frame rate of the movie like inner frame executes, but at any interval you specify or however many times you specify, or both. If you'd like to follow along, I'm in timer.fla in the Chapter 4 working files. Let's take a look at this movie before we get started. We have our border on the timeline, but he's actually inside of another movie clip called animation. So if we double click there, then we can go to this timeline and see that he jumps up and comes back down. So let's preview the movie or test the movie by pressing Command or Control Enter. And he just jumps up and down indefinitely. So let's call a stop function inside of this animation. So make sure that you're in the timeline of animation and create a new layer. And name the new layer Actions. And on frame 1 of the Actions layer, open up your Actions panel, type the word stop, all lowercase, open and close parenthesis and a semicolon. Test the movie to verify that it no longer animates. Looks good. Close the movie. Go back to scene 1. Now let's create our timer. So I'm going to go in the Actions layer of scene 1. Click on the first keyframe and open up the Actions panel. The first thing we need to do to create a timer is to create a variable that holds that timer. So type var and then a space. Then we're going to give our timer a name. So I'm going to call my timer jump and then timer with a capital T. Type a colon and then type timer with a capital T. So the type of data that the jump timer is going to hold is a timer. Then type space equals space, and then type the word new. We saw this with the URL loader. We need to create a new instance of the timer class, and I'll explain classes in the next chapter. We use the new keyword. This is basically just like dragging an instance onto the stage from your library. So type new, space, and then timer with a capital T, open parenthesis. Now we need to specify one thing, and we can optionally specify a second thing. The first thing we need to specify is the delay in milliseconds. So let's say the delay is 5 seconds, so it's going to be 5,000. Close parenthesis, semicolon. So we just created a variable called jump timer. The data type is a timer, equal to a new instance of a timer. And the delay on the timer is 5,000, which means it's going to run every 5 seconds. So let's go down a few lines and type jump timer. Then type a dot, add event with a capital E, listener with a capital L. This time we're going to add the event listener to the timer, not to the stage, not to a movie clip, but to the timer itself. Then for the type, I'm going to put timer with capital T, event with a capital E, dot, and then capitalize timer, comma, space. The event we're passing in is timer event.timer. That's going to be whenever the timer runs. And now we're going to specify what function is going to run every 5 seconds. Let's just call this function jump. Close parenthesis, semicolon. Let's go down a few lines and type function, space, jump, open parenthesis. Now we need to say it receives an event, so type event, colon, and then timer event with a capital T, capital E for event, close parenthesis, colon, void with a lowercase v. Next line, open curly brace. Next line, close curly brace. Up arrow, enter to get within the curly braces. Now here we specify what happens every 5 seconds. What we need to do next is give the animation an instance name. So let's close the Actions panel. Click on the border on the stage in scene 1. And let's just give this an instance name of animation _ MC. And that's the movie clip that holds the border jumping up and down. The border's instance name is still border _ MC. So it's inside of animation _ MC. So let's go back up. Click on the Actions keyframe. Open up the Actions panel. I just want to tell the animation to play, so I'm just going to type animation _ MC dot play. Open and close parenthesis, and a semicolon. If you were to test the movie right now, nothing would happen. Before we do anything we need to tell the timer to start counting. So after the close curly brace of my event handler, I'm going to go down a few lines and I'm going to type jump timer, capital T, dot start. It's an open and close, parenthesis, and a semicolon. Now test the movie. And every 5 seconds, your snowboarder will take a leap. Like so. Now let's say I only want him to jump once. I'm going to go to the very top of my code where we created the new instance of the timer. After the 5,000, I'm going to type a comma, a space, and then a 1. And that's going to be the repeat, or how many times this is going to run. So let's test that. Wait 5 seconds. Watch him jump. And wait 5 seconds longer. And we don't see anything. So we can have it run as many times as we want by specifying that when we create the new instance of the timer class. You can use this similar to enter frame. You can have it execute more often or less often or however you want. You can see that the timer is a little bit more code than the enter frame, but it also gives you a lot more control. So it's pretty much your call to whether you want to use enter frame or the timer. If it's going to execute along with the frame rate anyway, I would recommend enter frame just because it's a little easier to write. And the timer is good if you need it to execute more or less than the frame rate or only a certain number of times. And that's how to use a timer to control an animation.